she said. "If you don't like my friends, then leave." And just like that, my heart sank. It wasn't just the words, it was the cold, final way she said them. In that single moment, everything we had built felt like it was crumbling to dust, all because I couldn't stand the people she chose to surround herself with. Have you ever been in that position? Forced to choose between the person you love and your own self-respect? It's a place I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Our relationship had always been intense, a whirlwind of passion and deep connection that made me feel like I'd finally found my person. We connected on every level, or so I thought. We finished each other's sentences. We knew each other's coffee orders by heart, and we could spend hours just talking about nothing and everything. It was the kind of love you see in movies, the kind that makes you believe in soulmates. But there was a shadow lurking in the background, a part of her life that I just couldn't reconcile with the woman I loved. Her friends. They were a package deal, a constant presence in our lives, and from the very beginning, something felt off. It wasn't just that I didn't have anything in common with them, it was the way they looked at me, the way they whispered to each other when I walked into a room, the subtle and not so subtle ways they made it clear I was an outsider. I tried. I really did. For her, I would have tried anything. But every smile felt fake. Every conversation was a minefield, and I always left feeling drained and small. The worst part was, she didn't see it, or maybe she didn't want to. To her, they were her rocks, her history, her tribe. To me, they were the poison slowly seeping into the roots of our relationship, and I was terrified of what would happen when it finally reached our hearts. It all came to a head last Saturday. She was hosting a get-together at our apartment, one of her infamous casual parties that always ended up being a full-blown rager. I had a long week at work and was looking forward to a quiet night in, maybe a movie and some takeout, but she had other plans. Her friends were coming over, and that meant the apartment would be filled with loud music, cheap beer, and the same tired jokes I'd heard 100 times before. I put on a brave face, of course. I helped her clean. I set out the snacks. I even made a half-hearted attempt to mix a pitcher of margaritas. I was trying to be the supportive boyfriend, the guy who could roll with the punches and embrace her world. But the moment they started to arrive, that familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. There was Mark, with his smug grin and his backhanded compliments that always left me feeling like an idiot. There was Jessica, who made it a point to bring up my girlfriend's ex-boyfriends every chance she got, always with a sly glance in my direction. And then there was the rest of the crew. A loud, obnoxious bunch who treated our home like a frat house. They spilled drinks on the new rug. They put their feet up on the coffee table. They talked over me every time I tried to join the conversation. I felt like a ghost in my own home, a silent observer watching a life that was supposed to be mine. At one point, I was in the kitchen getting another drink, and I overheard Mark talking to her. He was laughing, a loud, booming laugh that grated on my nerves. "I don't know how you put up with him," he said, and my blood ran cold. "He's just so quiet. Don't you get bored?" I waited for her to defend me, to tell him off, to stand up for the man she claimed to love. But all she did was give a weak little laugh and say, "Oh, he's not so bad, not so bad." That's what she had to say about me. It was like a punch to the gut. I spent the rest of the night on the balcony, nursing a warm beer and trying to figure out what I was doing here. I loved her. I really did. But was love supposed to feel this lonely? Was it supposed to make me feel this invisible? The music pounded through the walls. The laughter felt like a mockery, and all I could think was, I don't belong here. This isn't my life. And for the first time, I started to wonder if it ever could be. I watched them through the glass, a tight-knit circle of people who had known each other for years, with their inside jokes and their shared history, and she was right in the middle of it, laughing and smiling, looking happier than I had seen her all week. And in that moment, I realized that I wasn't just an outsider to her friends. I was an outsider to a part of her, a part that she would never be willing to give up. Later that night, after everyone had finally stumbled out into the early hours of the morning, the apartment was a disaster zone. Empty bottles, half-eaten plates of food, a sticky mess on the floor. I started to clean up, my movements stiff and angry. She came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "That was fun, wasn't it?" she said, her voice still buzzing. From the party. I didn't answer. I just kept scrubbing at a stubborn stain on the counter. She must have sensed my mood because her arms dropped away. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice losing its cheerful edge. I turned to face her, the exhaustion and frustration of the entire night written all over my face. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't keep pretending that I'm okay with this. With them." Her face hardened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I can't stand your friends," I said, the words tumbling out of me in a rush. "They're rude, they're disrespectful, and they treat me like I'm nothing. And you just let them," she scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. "Oh, here we go again. You're just being dramatic. They're my friends. They're just joking around." "Joking?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You call that joking? Mark was making fun of me in our own kitchen, and you didn't say a word. Jessica spent the entire night talking about your exes right in front of me. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel?" "You're too sensitive," she said, dismissing my feelings with a wave of her hand. "That's just how they are. You need to lighten up." "Lighten up?" I was incredulous. "You want me to lighten up while the people you surround yourself with actively disrespect our relationship, while they make it clear that I'll never be good enough for you?" We stood there in the wreckage of the party, the silence stretching between us, thick with resentment and unspoken words. The argument escalated from there, a whirlwind of accusations and hurt feelings. I told her how lonely I felt, how I felt like I was constantly competing for her attention, how I didn't feel like a priority in her life. She accused me of being controlling, of trying to isolate her from her friends, of not trusting her. Every word was a blow, every sentence a crack in the foundation of our relationship. It was a vicious, ugly fight, the kind that leaves you feeling raw and empty inside. We were saying things we could never take back, things that would hang in the air between us long after the anger had faded. The anger in the room was a living thing, pulsing between us. My chest was tight, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "This isn't about control," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and hurt. "This is about respect. It's about feeling like your partner has your back. And I don't feel that, not when they're around. I feel like I'm an inconvenience you have to tolerate." Her eyes, usually so full of warmth, were cold and hard as stone. She took a step back, creating a physical distance that mirrored the emotional chasm that had opened up between us. "They are my friends," she said, enunciating each word with chilling precision. "They were here long before you were, and they'll be here long after you're gone, if you keep this up." The threat hung in the air, sharp and deadly. It was the moment I had been dreading, the confirmation of my deepest fear, that I was disposable, that my place in her life was conditional. I felt a wave of despair wash over me, so powerful it almost brought me to my knees. This was it, the breaking point. All the small compromises, the swallowed insults, the forced smiles, they had all led to this. I looked at the woman standing in front of me, the person I had shared my dreams and fears with, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. Who was this person who could so easily dismiss my pain? Who could value the approval of her toxic friends over the health of our relationship? Our silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. I knew that what I said next would change everything. There was no going back from this. My voice was hollow when I finally spoke. "So, that's it then? It's them or me?" I asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear her say it. I needed to hear the finality of it, the nail in the coffin of what we once had. She didn't even hesitate. She looked me straight in the eye, her expression unyielding, and delivered the line that would echo in my mind for weeks to come. "If you don't like my friends, then leave." My heart didn't just sink, it shattered. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me, and I was free falling into a dark, empty space. In that moment, all the love I had for her curdled into a bitter mix of disbelief and profound sadness. This was her choice. She had chosen them. She had chosen the laughter and the inside jokes, and the shared history over a future with me. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked into the bedroom, the sound of my own footsteps deafeningly loud in the silent apartment. I packed a bag, my hands moving on autopilot, my mind a blank slate of shock and pain. I could hear her in the other room, not crying, not calling out for me, just silence. The silence was worse than any shouting match. It was the sound of indifference. It was the sound of an ending. As I walked out the door, I didn't look back. I couldn't, because if I did, I was afraid I would see the woman I loved, and not the stranger who had just broken my heart. Now I'm here, driving aimlessly, the city lights blurring through my tears. I'm left with this impossible question, this weight on my chest that feels like it's going to crush me. I have to ask you, because I honestly don't know the answer anymore. Who comes first, friends or your partner?